Welcome to another episode of Knowledge is Power, where we're here to work together to help you overcome life challenges. As we know, being a woman over 40, we does face a lot of different changes at our age group. Today, we're talking about a very wonderful topic, menopause and health. How many of us is affected? How many of us are confused? How many of us just don't know what's going on? So today I have a health expert here. I have Sheryl here to go through some of the challenges and why we are feeling the way that we do. Hi, Sheryl. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the session and shedding some light on everything and giving you some strategies to navigate what can be a pretty crazy time for us all. So giving you some power back.
Definitely. I was just behind the scene. I was just talking to Cheryl that my week last week was definitely a menopause week. My short fuse and everything's become agitated. Your senses go up. It was crazy. But this week, I'm fine again. So it will be wonderful to find out why we are having so much differences and changes in our body. So without further ado, I'm going to leave the store and I'm on the background. And I'll look forward to hearing your presentation, Cheryl.
Amazing. All right. Thank you. Let me share my screen and we will get going. Okay, so the session today is all around nutrition to thrive because even though we're going through this crazy time in our lives that will happen to all women, there is so much that we can do to take control of our health, our outcomes, and everything that will really support whether we go down the path of hormone therapy or not. So this session, I'm going to be using a tool called Menti. But before we dive into that, I just want to just do the obligatory disclaimers that this session is for information purposes only. Nothing here is medical advice. And so please take anything you hear today to discuss with your medical practitioner because it's important for you to kind of analyze that in the context of your specific situation. We are all different. So, please take everything, with discretion. So I'm going to be using menti.com. So for those of you that are joining in live from the Facebook group, and for those of you who are here, who joined in the Zoom room earlier, just take your phones out and you can scan the QR code, or you can go to menti.com if you're on your computer and go to code 89777267. And then hopefully I can see that you're all joining live because there'll be some polls that I'm going to be sharing just to get the engagement, just to understand where you are all at. So I haven't seen, give me a thumbs up when you're on, please, so that I know we've got some people who've joined in as you sign in. Well, I will soon see because there's going to be a poll coming up. So as we go, I want to know from you what words come to mind when you imagine a 90-year-old woman. What are the things that come to mind? So, if I ask my 6-year-old son what word comes to mind, it would be, walking stick, bent over. So yes, old. Anything else that comes to mind? Generally when we imagine a 90-year-old woman, you think of frailty, somebody who's bent over, who's maybe lacking energy. So really what I want from you is to start to shift that narrative because that doesn't have to be your reality. And actually, everything we do now is essential for setting you up for not being that bent over woman with a walking stick. Okay, I love here that somebody said knowledgeable. Absolutely. And when you marry knowledge and wisdom with being able to engage fully in life, I mean, that is just incredibly powerful. So I love this quote here from Dr. Lara Briden. So perimenopause and the early years of menopause are a critical window for health, and that's even if you don't have symptoms. I always see in the Facebook group, there are many women who are struggling with various symptoms, and I know it can be very confronting. I've had my own suite of those symptoms as well, which I've, managed to really minimize through lifestyle and hormone therapy, actually. But there's some women who have no symptoms at all until, their period stops. But actually, these symptoms that we get are just messages from our body that something is out of alignment. and gives us the opportunity to transform our lifestyle or change our lifestyle. Because this window of this period that we have here, that we're all going to go through as women, is an opportunity to set us up for success for the next half or third of our lives, depending on how long you want to live for. And so really, like the choices you make now, I know we're all, bothering with the weight gain and, maybe not sleeping so well and the brain fog and all of that. But actually, we need to be thinking about, well, what does that mean from my long-term health perspective, and making the changes now that are not only going to help us lose the weight, but are also going to allow us to be a vibrant 90-year-old woman. So the reality check, and what I really want you to have at the top of your mind when making these changes can feel hard, is that we don't necessarily have a very long time. We're in the final half or final third of our lives, and we are aging. It's just a matter of fact. I know we don't like that we're aging, but we've been aging since the day we were born. And the average life expectancy of a woman in Australia is 85.3 years of age. And of that lifetime, what the research shows now is that 13% of that is spent in ill health, which means that it's a woman who's going to be in a nursing home, probably not, self-sufficient, maybe needing support, a lot of frailty, maybe, needing to be looked after, etc. So what I really want you to think about now is, yes, it's amazing to have the goal of wanting to fit into a bikini, feeling good in our clothes, all of those sorts of things. But really, I want you to start thinking longer term, because this is where we have the opportunity to influence how amazing or how problematic the next phase of our life is going to be. So our choices now, and what we're focusing on in this session, is nutrition, is really critical. Our daily choices are critical in terms of where we're going, which path are we going down in terms of our aging. So I want you to really, when we're thinking about making our choices, I want you to imagine your 90-year-old self. So this lady here is a 90-year-old bodybuilder who lives in Japan. And she only started bodybuilding in her later years. I think it was around the age of 70. And, so it really shows you that you can learn new skills at any age, as Martha and I were talking about earlier, she's learned her amazing new tech skills. So really, you need to be thinking about nourishing your body now in a way that's going to support you to age well and to have a long health span. So health span is just the term that you use to describe the length of years that you live, that you are in good health. You're doing the things you want to do, you can engage with the people you want to engage with, you can go hiking, play with your grandkids, all of the things that are important to you. That's what we want to work on in terms of our nutrition. So in order to understand how we need to eat, it's important to put that into the context of exactly what on earth is going on with our hormones. So perimenopause, actually, let me start with the definition of menopause. So menopause is really just a time-bound definition. It's this very faint dotted line here, which is just described as 1 year that you don't have a menstrual period. So if you haven't had a period for 8 months, you are not yet in menopause. You have to wait until you get to 12 months. And then once you've hit the 12-month mark, you will stay in menopause for the rest of your life. Some people call that postmenopause, but that's the state that you will stay in. And all the time before that, this kind of roller coaster, choppy looking picture here, before that is perimenopause, which I actually like to catch women from about the age of 35, because with the high levels of stress that we have in our modern day environment, women are starting to experience perimenopause type symptoms and lowering levels of hormones from as early as the age of 35. So the time between menopause and 35 is perimenopause. And that's what is described as the messy middle. That's where our hormones are going on this bit of a roller coaster, but ultimately are trending downwards to the low level of hormones that we will stay at when we are in menopause or postmenopausal. So it's this phase here where our hormones are going up and down that creates the chaos, because sometimes it's particularly our estrogen. So the first hormone to start to decline from the age of 35 is the calming hormone progesterone, which comes in the second half of our cycle, and that offsets estrogen. So when that starts to go down, it can start to feel just that your PMS symptoms are a little bit worse. Maybe your sleep is a little bit worse, you're bleeding a little bit heavier. So those are the first subtle signs of perimenopause. And then as you go through towards menopause, your estrogen starts to fluctuate wildly. It's like this roller coaster, because our ovaries, which are primary sex hormone producing glands, are bowing out. They no longer want to be our primary sex hormone producing glands. They're handing over responsibility to the adrenal glands. So the swings of estrogen happen because some months the ovaries just are not communicating. They just don't want to push out any hormones, so we get low hormones. And other months they are screaming out and they were shooting out a lot of estrogen. So it's this uncertainty that happens in our body that creates confusion as well. So it's very unpredictable. Our periods can lengthen. They can be very heavy. We can go for a few months without having a period, until obviously you hit the menopause mark. And just to say, there's no, like, when you're in this perimenopause phase, there is no blood test at the moment, or no test at the moment that can diagnose perimenopause. I know there's a lot of chat about that in the group, but that's correct. You can diagnose menopause, but you will know you're in menopause because you haven't had a period for a year. But you can test that you've got consistently elevated follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Whereas here, you can see if you try and test, some months it may look like you've got high hormones, other months it may look like you've got low hormones. So diagnosing perimenopause is based on your symptoms and how you're feeling. So really keeping tuned into how your body feels is incredibly important. And also subtle changes. So why this can be so confronting for women is that I think naively we all just assume that losing our period means we are no longer fertile, and that's the only thing that is actually going to change. But when your hormones start to change, you will know that when your hormones start to go on this roller coaster, you actually have hormone receptors all over your body. So your body has gotten used to having a certain level of hormones every month in a certain rhythm. All of a sudden, that rhythm is out. And so it impacts every single body system. And so how that shows up for different women really just depends on your genetics. It depends on, like, each of us will have a bit of a genetic weakness, but you will start to see some common themes, even looking at the comments in the book, where women will start to have a redistribution of weight, from their hips to their belly. We become more insulin resistant. So very carb heavy meals are just going to make things more problematic for us. It can make, increased brain fog, etc. Our microbiome changes as our hormones change. And we can have all of these psychological symptoms where we become less resistant to stress. We can, be predisposed to overwhelm, anxiety, low mood, brain fog, all of these sorts of things. So it seems like a very dire picture, but I think it's incredibly important to be aware of the suite of, and this is not all of them. Like, there are some things like burning mouth syndrome as well that can be, that, dizziness, things like that also impact women. But this is at a higher level. These are the main symptoms and the body systems that are impacted by the changing hormones. So just knowing this is then empowering you to start to connect the dots to things that are happening for you at the moment. And then knowing that it's linked to your hormones is actually helpful, and then how you can then take your steps forward. So I like to just explain that these are the common symptoms, but it does not have to be your reality, because we've got the lever of lifestyle, really thinking about how you're choosing the way you eat, the way you move, the way you manage stress, the way you prioritize sleep, and then layering on, hormone therapy and supplements can really, move you away from these symptoms. So don't stress. That's what we're going to be talking about now. So it's all about finding a new balance for yourself. You can't do what you've always done in your 20s and your early 30s because your body is changing. It's just different. So you really need to rethink your choices. So I like to think of it as like a scale analogy. So hormones are going down. So we got to really lift the game when it comes to our lifestyle. It's not going to happen for us. We have to work with our body to get the results and to get the health outcomes that we are after. So we need to think about our nutrition in the context of what do we need to do so that we have the energy, so that our weight is healthy, that our brain feels switched on, our mood is stable, and we can actually sleep properly, because our nutritional choices can actually drive that for us. So when it comes to our nutrition, the things that I want you to be thinking about is not just what you eat, like what you're putting on your plate. It's actually making sure that you're eating enough. And then what do you actually put on your plate? And then supporting your body to actually digest the food. Because if you have the best food on your plate, but you're eating in a stressed state, or you're not chewing your food properly, or you've got gut issues, it's going to be very, very hard to actually get the benefit of that food. Like your body won't be able to digest it and break it down efficiently. And then the final piece of the puzzle is meal timing. So how are you actually structuring your meal times? And is that done are you doing that in a way that's actually working for you? Or do you need to do some tweaks there as well? So eating just enough. So for those of you who have just jumped on, you can go to menti.com and use the code 89777267 to engage in the polls. But I just want to know from each of you, do you know how much you should be eating? Like, have you gone on to a MyFitnessPal or something like a Carb Manager or anything to calculate how much you should be eating? Okay, so got a thumbs up. Okay. So you no idea, or you've calculated it, but you don't track now. Okay. Because what I've so often find is that women are under eating. So the most important thing is that we recognize that we are busy. Many of us are working, kids, exercising, managing households, cleaning households, walking dogs. That's a lot of output. And there's also a lot of cognitive demand on us, because we carry all the lists generally of, keeping things afloat in our households. And if we what I very often see is that women will start to feel like they're putting on weight, so they lean into, okay, I've got to eat less and then exercise more. And what that ends up doing, that puts the body under stress, and it can actually start causing the thyroid to be suboptimal, and you can end up putting on weight. Because when you consistently undereat, it puts you in a state that's called low energy availability. So that is where your body doesn't have enough calories to actually operate, to keep the lights on. So it actually forces your body to slow down the metabolic rate. So really eating enough is incredibly important. Or you may be on the other side where you are overfed because, maybe you're eating emotionally, or, you're just eating a lot of empty calories like cookies and donuts and chips and things like that are very high in calories, but very low in nutrients. So that you would be undernourished, but overfed. So it's just thinking about where are you in the context of that equation. So when we're thinking about meeting our energy demands, we want to be in the middle here. So some people are either exercising excessively, like our endurance athletes, and if they aren't intentionally eating enough to fuel their energy demands, they will end up in this low energy availability state. Like you'll often see that a lot of athletes that aren't under proper guidance will lose their periods because they're in this low energy availability state. or for, the average person who isn't necessarily exercising to that extent, they just are not eating enough to fuel for their everyday demands as well as the exercise that they're doing. So we want to make sure that we are eating enough. And the easiest way to do it is to just go and calculate that for yourself, using one of the free tools available like MyFitnessPal, because we don't want to end up in the state that actually suppresses our thyroid hormone, because low thyroid function feels very much like the common perimenopause symptoms with the weight loss resistance, the low energy, the hair loss. So, if somebody is experiencing these perimenopause symptoms, I always want them to check their thyroid, because there is almost like a bit of a thyroid crisis with women in perimenopause as well, because the thyroid starts to slow down under stress. And, I think a lot of us are stretched. There's a lot of stress in our lives at the moment. And then with this low energy availability as well, it will further suppress our hormones, so further dysregulate our hormones and just make the whole situation feel worse. And so really just to kind of put things side by side is that very often low energy availability mirrors the symptoms of perimenopause, and particularly in the early stages of perimenopause, so, maybe between 35 and 45, actually the fact that you're not fueling yourself properly or enough could actually correct some of these symptoms that you're experiencing. So, really just making sure you're eating enough is my key point. So when we're thinking about what our body needs, we've got our basal metabolic rate. So, this is our what we need to keep our bodily functions working. But then we've also got our food takes energy to break down. We've got incidental movement we do through the day. So that's, going out to get the post, it's raking the garden, it's cleaning the kitchen, it's me talking to you now because I use my hands a lot. And then it's also the energy that we expend doing exercise. But you can actually see that the amount of energy that you use during a formal exercise session is actually the least amount of energy through, of that whole pyramid. I think when we're thinking about like the weight loss equation, if weight loss is a thing that you're thinking about and you are eating enough, but you're eating a lot because you're doing an hour of exercise, maybe you're over consuming, in the context of what you need to support that exercise that you're doing. Alrighty. Are there any questions on that? Martha, just pop in if there are any questions, if you want me to answer.
I would probably ask that, like, I've been told that certain type of food is only suitable for a certain type of people. Is that right? How do we actually know what type of food is actually good for us as individual?
Okay, so let me go into the what to eat then, because that's what I'm going to be covering next. And yes, nutrition is bio-individual, and only you will know what foods work for you and what foods don't. But I would caveat that by saying if you've been eating an ultra-processed food diet for a long period of time, and then you try and overhaul everything and throw in a lot of plant foods and a lot of protein, your body may need support to break that down. You may need to ease into your new way of eating because your microbiome has adjusted, your digestive enzymes have adjusted to your diet that you have been eating over the period of time. So, any change, even if it's good change, needs to be done slowly so that your body can adjust. Very often what happens is if somebody has been eating a very poor diet and then they want to overhaul everything and they do it too quickly, they take the message of things like bloating and gas as a sign that it's not right for them, when actually they just needed to allow their body time to adjust to actually eating in a way that's more supportive of their health. So yes, each person is definitely individual, but maybe you can just ask me specific questions as we go through, but let me just cover the principles and then we can go from there. But I think the starting point that I would love everybody to reflect on is, how do you feel when you're eating more nutritious food? If you're being intentional about the food that you're putting on your plate. So I think we very often, forget when we get busy, we very often forget that when we eat well, we feel better. Okay, well, I'll just assume that everybody feels better when they eat more nutritious food. Okay, so let's talk quickly about macro and micronutrients. So we need both. So macronutrients are the big things that you'll see on your plate. So protein, carbohydrates, and fat. So carbohydrates and fiber go together. So protein would be things like your meat, your tofu, your eggs, legumes for people who don't eat animal products, but legumes are going to be part protein, part carb, and part fiber. Carbohydrates would be, I think everybody thinks about bread and pasta when we're talking about carbohydrates, but carbohydrates are vegetables, fruits, grains, and there's carbohydrates and things like nuts and seeds, etc. as well. And what we want is carbohydrates to be mixed with fiber because that slows down the uptake of the glucose. So we really want whole food carbohydrates is really what we want to be focusing on. And then fats. So, fat would be your avocados, olive oil, coconut oil, sesame oil, etc. So we want to make sure we're getting the right split of those in order to fuel our body properly. And when we're eating whole food forms of those, we're going to be able to get micronutrients, which are things like vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, all the goodness that comes from things that grow from the land or run across the land or swim in the sea. Things that come from nature have these micronutrients in them. So we need these micronutrients in order for our body to function properly. Where we have nutrient deficiencies, you will get so many more symptoms. When we are stressed, for example, we fly through our B vitamins. So we need to make sure we're eating in a way to fuel for the processes that are going on in our body. So the first principle, that I want you to be thinking about from like an 80-20 perspective is really just to eat things that come from the ground or run on the ground, swim in the sea, not from a box. So, things that our great-great-grandparents would recognize as being food, not, things that come in like a bar or a processed, fake meat or something like that, which has got 60,000 ingredients, half of them you can't pronounce the names of. And that's always the test that I like people to do, is that when they look at really to get curious about food labels, looking for if they can't pronounce an ingredient or they don't know what an ingredient is, just put the box back down. I get that we need convenience because we are all busy. So if you do need to use, a food that comes from a box, just make sure that, if you're getting like a lentil pasta or a brown rice pasta, it's just brown rice. That's all the only thing that's in there, not 5 ingredients. So just be curious about what that looks like on the label. So this is obvious, but we really want the majority of our food to be this whole fresh food. There's always time, to have a little bit of the stuff that's on the right-hand side of the screen. But when we rely on that for our nutrients, we are going to exacerbate our symptoms in perimenopause and menopause and move us away from that picture of health that we want for our 90-year-old selves. So, it's really just finding that 80-20 rule for yourself and also thinking about your relationship with the food. Are you having something because you want it and you're celebrating somebody's birthday, or are you having it because you need it to numb a feeling or to reward yourself or something like that, because maybe the relationship with that food is not serving you. So protein is incredibly important and a macronutrient that I think most women don't have enough of. I'll very often say to my clients, what are you having for breakfast? And they say, oh, I have protein for breakfast. I have an egg. But I want them to be having 30 grams of protein at each meal, because that is what hits the muscle protein synthesis threshold, which is the amount of amino acids that you need to build or to rebuild or to grow your muscles, which we need, because as we lose our estrogen and testosterone, we can lose our muscle mass. And our muscle is also it's a very energy hungry organ. So it really helps us with our glucose metabolism and really fueling our metabolism as well. So if you don't want to calculate these numbers for yourself, what I'd like you to think about is just having 30 grams of protein at each meal. So if you're having 3 meals a day, you want 30 grams of protein. So 5 eggs, I know, is a lot. So maybe have 2 eggs and some smoked salmon, or 2 eggs and some cottage cheese for breakfast. And then for lunch, have a 130-gram piece of chicken breast. And then at dinner, maybe have 140 grams of beef. And that's going to get you your 30 grams of protein at each meal. Just start to think about how much protein you are having. You know, it really helps with satiety. So if you're finding yourself always hungry, it may be because you're just not getting enough protein in at each of your meals. So our gut microbiome changes as our hormones change. So it's incredibly important to support our gut through the food that we eat. And the way to do that is to actually try and aim for 30 different types of plant foods a week. So that would be your fruits, your vegetables, your nuts, your seeds, your grains, if they work for you, oils, coffee, tea. Gives you some plant points as well, because it's the diversity of the fibers in the different types of food that actually fuels your microbiome and helps your good gut bugs grow. And as you all know, all disease starts in the gut. So if you're really focused on nourishing your gut, it's incredibly helpful from an overall health perspective, but also from a hormonal health standpoint. The gut is the final place that we actually metabolize our hormones. So there's a real link between our hormone health and our gut health as well. And then you can also add in some probiotic rich food. Things like kimchi and kefir and kombucha are amazing to add in a bit of that at each meal. If you are somebody who gets bloated with probiotic foods, there may be, you may have a level of gut issues going on. So just hold back, and then try again, or just try really slowly and see if that makes a difference. So the next macronutrient is fat, but we want good quality fats. So things like seed oils, which I'm sure you've all heard about, are quite problematic for us. They cause us to rust from the inside out. That's things like canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, soybean oil, and rather focus on avocado oil, coconut oil, sesame oil, omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish. Those are all really beneficial oils. Any processed food, or if you go to a restaurant, you're going to be getting the seed oils because they're cheap, they're tasteless, and it's just an easier way to make the products. So, when you're in your own home, just make sure you're having the good quality oils. That's what you can control. And then when I spoke about the symptoms of perimenopause, one of the things that I highlighted was the fact that we become less insulin sensitive, which means that our body isn't as good at pulling glucose out of our blood into our cells for energy. And when we have higher levels of insulin, it stops our bodies going into a fat burning zone. So higher levels of insulin can actually be one of the reasons why women struggle to lose weight. Because even when you're in a fasted state, if your insulin level is still high, it's impossible to switch over into a fat burning mode. So the way to bring that insulin level down is to really limit your processed carbs and to eat in the balanced way that I've been speaking about. With getting the good quality protein, getting all that beautiful fiber in, having good quality fats, staying away from, for the most part, the rolls and the pastas and the donuts and all of those sorts of things, because that if you continually eat those, you'll just increase your blood glucose. Your body will have to release more insulin, and because we are less insulin sensitive, we'll get higher levels of insulin to pull the glucose into our cells, and that high level of insulin remains there. And so by having less of those processed carbs, we'll get fewer of these blood sugar swings. So that's a really, really important one. And it also minimizes the brain fog, the irritability, the energy swings that come from having processed carbs. You know, if you think about giving your child an ice cream on an empty stomach, which I saw the other day, rage and energy drop and just complete dysregulation. So that's how we are as well when we're having these blood sugar swings. So really just, thinking about how do we keep our energy more consistent by staying away from these processed carbs. And then there are specific foods that you can eat that support our hormones. So things like that help with the hormone metabolism. So that would be things like broccoli sprouts, phytoestrogens that help things like soy, flaxseed, legumes, bean sprouts, all really help with that, either increasing estrogen or help with the estrogen metabolism. So phytoestrogens can help with whichever way you need them to go. They kind of help lift it up or help bring it down. There's specific fibers in apples, beetroots, and carrots that also help with estrogen detoxification. And there's another nutrient in raspberries, like the red fruits, called ellagic acid. That's also really helpful from a estrogen metabolism standpoint. So, incorporating these in your plant food is very, very helpful from a hormonal health standpoint as well as a gut health, actually. And then finally, we've spoken a little bit about food labels, really just thinking about the quality of the food that you're putting on your plate. I totally get that things are incredibly expensive at the moment. So eating organic is pretty much out of reach for most people. So what you can do is look at the environmental working groups, Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen lists. And the Clean 15 are the conventionally grown produce that you can eat, and you just got to wash it normally with, I just wash in apple cider vinegar and water, and that's fine to buy conventionally grown. The Dirty Dozen are unfortunately the produce that conventionally grown, no matter what you do, even if you wash them, you will never get the pesticides out. So if you're thinking about going organic for anything, this would be the area to focus on. But as I said, I know that it's incredibly pricey right now to eat in that way. The other thing is to try and find a local farmer that has got good farming practices, and grow your own if you have the ability or access to a backyard, and then kind of how it's grown as well. And then when we're thinking about protein, grass-fed, finished, pastured poultry, wild-caught fish is obviously the better way to go, because unfortunately, conventionally raised animals, there's really, really bad farming practices. They're not fed the most nutritious food, so it can be quite inflammatory when we eat it. But there are ways to get access to pasture-raised and grass-fed and finished, animals by sharing, a cow between a family. Like if you do eat animal protein, and for plant-based protein, making sure that soy-based products are non-genetically modified as well, because that just ensures that we don't get the levels of inflammation. Our body can't really recognize genetically modified food very well, so that can actually raise inflammation in our system. So to screenshot anything, this would be it. So putting your plates together. So, you'll be coming up to dinner time, thinking about putting your plate together. So you draw a line down the middle of the plate. So you want half the plate to be your leafy greens, above the ground vegetables, so your non-starchy vegetables. You want a quarter of the plate to be your good quality protein. So I think it's easier just to measure out what your 30 gram of protein piece of meat is, or if you're using your plant-based protein, what that looks like from a measurement perspective. A quarter of the place is going to be your good quality whole food carbohydrates, and then depending on how you've cooked your meat or what your meat is or how you've cooked your veggies, you may need to add a little bit of fat, whether that's adding some avocado or some nuts and seeds to your veggies, just making sure you are getting that good quality fat. And then thinking about potentially adding on 2 to 4 tablespoons of your fermented food, your probiotic rich food. And then don't forget the water. So if you aren't focused on drinking enough water, you are very likely dehydrated, and that can actually raise stress in our system. So you don't want to be gulping down water with your meals, because that can reduce the strength of your stomach acid and your digestive enzymes. But this is more just a prompt for you to make sure that you are drinking enough through the day. 2 liters plus, if you're very active, 3 liters, or if you're going in the sauna, maybe even more. So really just making sure that you are hydrated. Our bodies are 70% water, so we need to make sure we are drinking enough, not too much, but just drinking enough water through the day. So were there any questions there, Martha? Was there anything on that you wanted me to cover more of when you're asking about the
It says that can that be a combination of power or and
powders?
food?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
power.
powders. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's very difficult sometimes to get that amount of protein in whole food form. So particularly if you haven't eaten that much protein in the past. So definitely I use protein powders. It's just easiest in the morning for me to get that in, smoothies, things like that. So yes, absolutely. Even adding, protein powder to, I don't know, to Greek yogurt or to cottage cheese, just to get that 30 grams of protein is very easy if dairy works for you. So yes, absolutely. But also once again, just look at the quality of that protein powder and just look at the food, like the label, etc., and make sure that it's a good one. So when to eat. Okay, so I'm not sure many of you are engaging in the polls. So I just wanted to know if you are practicing intermittent fasting. Okay, no. Thank you. I've got a response. Awesome. Okay, so no. Okay, perfect. So this is something that I wanted to cover. So we'll talk about kind of the meal timings now. So like I mentioned before, what you eat and is just as important as when you eat. So I grew up in the era where it was multiple small meals a day. You want to boost your metabolism, like really important. But actually the whole theory on that has changed, because if we think about our gut health, our guts have never been designed to be constantly fed. And from a blood glucose control perspective, we want to have periods of being fed and we want to have periods of time of being fasted. So what that looks like is actually going back to the standard 3 meals a day, or if you're somebody who's practicing intermittent fasting, and that really works for you, that may look like 2 meals a day as an example. So, I personally don't do long fasts unless I'm doing something like a liver detox. So I'll fast for, so I do fast. So what I want people to think about is just to have a break from eating, which is intermittent fasting, from, 2 to 3 hours before bed, like 3 hours is ideal, um, to then not eat for 12 to 15 hours. That is generally a safe amount of time not to eat for everybody. And it gives your body time to digest. It gives your body time to focus on the rest, repair, and rejuvenation that happens when we sleep. So, everybody should really be doing that break from eating for at least 12 hours, and you can push it to 15 if that works for you. And then, spacing your meals over your eating window, to have that being 3 meals a day. The only caveat to that is if you're exercising, just say you're exercising in the morning, maybe pre-fueling a bit to give you the substrate to actually hit it really hard at the gym. And then, you almost like splitting your breakfast then. So that's kind of a caveat in terms of the 3 meals a day. So, because that, as I mentioned, that's really helpful from a gut health perspective and really important from that blood glucose regulation perspective. Because if you keep putting food in your mouth, you're going to keep getting that insulin that's being released. And that's going to keep that insulin level higher. So we want to bring that down. And then, so, finishing off your meals, not eating close to bedtime, we need to make sleep a complete priority, because as our hormones shift, sleep is one of the biggest pain points. Like, that's my biggest pain point that I constantly work on. And not eating close to bedtime is such a game changer, because then there's no food to digest, and your body can drop into sleep and get deep levels of sleep in the first part of the night, because that's what that part of the night is there for, to do the brain cleaning out. So if we're thinking about brain fog, we want to give our body the best opportunity to clean the brain out in that first part of sleep. And just very quickly to close off the conversation on fasting. So, I had this question earlier on in my session today. It's like, is fasting good or is it bad? There's some great research around fasting. The only thing to recognize is that fasting, like doing very, very long fasts, it's a hormetic stress, so it's a stress in our body. So you need to be thinking about it in the context of all the other stresses you have in your life, and thinking about what is your goal of fasting, and is it helping you to achieve that goal? Like, just being very curious of, is it actually helping you get to where you want to be? And also making sure that if you are doing longer fasts, that you're really, really dialing in your nutrition when you are in your eating windows, to make sure you're eating enough and you're not unintentionally putting yourself into that lower energy availability state. Alrighty. Let's check if there are any questions. And no, sorry for any of you who've joined a bit later, that you can't see the polls. You can just respond as we go. So how to eat. So, and you can just, if you don't have the polls, pop it in the chat. Do you get any digestive symptoms? Like, do you burp a lot after eating? Do you get bloated? Do you get gassy? Do you get cramps? Do you get heartburn? What are you feeling? Yes. Okay. Lots of digestive symptoms. Okay, heartburn, cramps. Okay. So heartburn is generally where you don't have enough stomach acid. So really maybe thinking about that. And the thing that actually helps our stomach acid production is calming the body before we eat, and making sure that our body is primed to eat. So, our bodies have been designed to digest our food, not when we are in a stress state. So I think if any of you have young kids, or maybe even old kids that are just problematic, or a partner you're having a fight with and you're trying to have dinner, blood supply is going to be moving away from your digestive tract. Your stomach acid and digestive enzymes are going to be suppressed. So it's going to be very hard for your body to digest your food properly if you are in a state of stress. So before you eat, it is very important for you to calm your nervous system. So do some big belly breaths. Breathe in through your nose and exhale like through pursed lips, because that stimulates the vagus nerve, and that'll put you into the rest or digest part of the nervous system, where our digestion comes online, blood supply moves to our digestive tract. So that's incredibly important. And also, digestion starts in the brain. It's when we see the food, we smell the food. So if we're getting Uber Eats, we need to just give our body a little bit of time to know that food is coming. So plate the food, like mimic that food preparation as best as you can when you're ordering in, so that your body's getting the cues that food is coming, and then your digestive juices will start to flow. And then while you eat, chew your food many, many times. I think we're so often in a rush that we don't chew our food enough. And that's the only mechanical part of digestion that we have. So if we're skipping that process and we're swallowing pieces of meat or whatever it is whole, we're relying on our digestive juices to break that all down into tiny, tiny pieces. And that's very hard work. So we need to help our bodies by chewing properly, put our forks, knife and fork down between mouthfuls, just go slow. Like, we're not meant to rush through our meals, and also try not to multitask, because it's hard for our body to know, to make the connection that we are full or we are still hungry if we're scrolling our phones or like watching the TV or working. Like, just if you can, take time away and eat, and let that be the time for eating, chewing, being with your food, enjoying the flavors, so that your body can actually absorb it, break it down, know when it's full, and then allow you to move on with your day. So I think a lot of us are just programmed to, as soon as we finished our last mouthful, oh, I'm still hungry. Oh, awesome. There's still some food there. I'm going to go finish that off. When actually we haven't given our body time to assess whether it's full or not. We've got to give our body time to release the signals of satiety. So just, make it, just slow down when it comes to eating. And eating a community is the easiest way to bring about that change. So if you can, as much as you can, eat in community. And if you are really struggling with digestive symptoms, supplementing with things like hydrochloric acid and pepsin, if you've got like the heartburn, if you feel like you can't break down protein, even adding in things like digestive enzymes, peppermint oil, digestive bitters can be very, very helpful as well. Because as we age, unfortunately, our stomach acid and our digestive enzymes do diminish in their strength. So sometimes we do need to supplement to support our digestion. Okay. So I'm just checking the time. Okay. The last piece of the puzzle that I'm going to fly through this because I know not everybody's engaging in the poll, or somebody did sometimes. Okay. Thank you. So I really want to just talk about this because this is where I feel so many of my clients come to me, and this is the nut that we have to crack together, because they're relying on food when they are feeling stressed, when they are overwhelmed, when they are feeling sad, when they are down, because they've connected that food to comfort ever since they were a young child. Is probably what their parents did with them. If they had a bad day, oh great, let's go get some cookies or whatever that is. So it's a built-in mechanism, it's a built-in habit to soothe through food. And it's a very, very, it requires a lot of intentionality to shift the habit. So I like to do it in like a 3-step process. So first of all, it's about finding what your kryptonite food is. So is it, some people it's boxes of cereal. I worked with somebody, she could not have cereal in the house. Other people it's chocolate, chips, whatever that looks like. What is the food that you mustn't have in the house? Or maybe it's even alcohol. Do you want to give up alcohol because it's not working for you? You need to get that thing out the house. Out the house, out the house, out the house. Give it away if you don't want to waste. I mean, we don't want to waste. Give it away to somebody who can enjoy it. And then you cannot go cold turkey. You need to find another thing to do that is not related to food at all, that can help you with that emotion. So just say it's sadness. Just say, you are feeling really sad about something that's going on, and you've always just gone to chocolate. What is the thing that you can do that is going to help you shift that behavior? Maybe it's actually putting on your shoes and getting out the house and going to your favorite place for a walk. Maybe it's you've got a friend who just knows how to lift you up. Maybe it's listening to your favorite song. Maybe it's having a bath with candles and essential oils. Like, you need to find something that is a replacement activity that helps you to meet that emotional need. And then the final piece of the puzzle, because maybe you're feeling sad, there's no chocolate in the house, so you go into your replacement activity, which is just say going to have a bath with essential oils. You've had your bath, you've had your essential oils, and you still want the bloody chocolate. Then you need to have friends who are your phone a friend, who can talk you back off the cliff. so you call that person your accountability partner and like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get into the car to go and get my chocolate, and you can talk through it. You may end up going to get that chocolate, going to the petrol station to go and get that chocolate, but you've gone through this 3-step process, and eventually the number of times that you actually get into the car and go and get that chocolate will diminish. And it takes about 3 months to completely shift the habit. So it just takes time, but you have to have a very firm structure in place and your people around you to help you. Because remember, this is a habit that's been in place for many, many, many years, like in most of our instance, in most of our situations. So you've got to come up with what is your framework for shifting the behavior that no longer serves you. So I hope this has been helpful. So really just to recap everything, that your body has specific nutritional requirements to support our changing hormones. So the things to think about are eating enough, 80% rule of mostly clean whole foods, chew your food, be with your food when you're eating it, and space your meals out to help your gut, to help your digestion, to help your metabolism, and just make sure that you are adequately hydrated through the day as well. So I think I've given you a lot, and you can't do it all at once. So choose 2 things, 2 actions from today, and commit to those and do those until they become 2 habits, and then choose 2 more. Maybe you just want to focus on the protein and the water, and like those are 2 game changers when you get those implemented well. So before I finish off, so for those of you who are on, there are some resources that I've pulled together for you that will help you implement all of these different strategies. So you can just scan the QR code and you can download it. Eat slower, protein reward system is awesome, amazing. So are there any other questions? I know we're 2 minutes over, but do we have any questions?
Any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you like, or ask in the chat there. The group is good. I got a question in the thing that said that not to buy into temptation and should just do it on a regular basis.
I have a question, if
Yes.
my phone's working.
Yes.
You made a comment about when you sort of convert over to eating good food and that. Sometimes when I do eat good food, I do bloat and get gassy and that kind of stuff. So what you were saying before is an indication that my gut microbiome and whatever is in the system is not prepared for that. Is that what and I should be like slowly introducing that kind of food back in, and not, I think I'm actually rush eating sometimes.
Yes.
So I do that. I've got to remind myself to do that. So do you have any other strategies that I can utilize
Yeah,
around?
yes. So I guess there are probably 2 things there from a bloating standpoint. If you are rush eating, think about how much air you're swallowing with your food. So that's probably causing a lot of bloating. And the other thing is, if your food has been very fiber deficient and now you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to go with the salads, I'm going to do all the veggies, all the things, your gut microbiome isn't used to all of that fiber. So perhaps it's about choosing, 2 vegetables at a time to then add in. Like maybe it's just about going slow, where you literally eat very simply of like protein, 2 veggies, and like a little bit of carbs. The whole food carbs, or maybe like some sweet potato or something. Rather than, throwing everything in the kitchen sink into like a stew or a salad or something, because salad leaves are very hard to break down. So if your body isn't used to breaking down that sort of fiber, you can go slower. You can use things like the fork test for veggies, where you cook them so they can be squashed by a fork. So that's where you're, allowing your body to digest that a lot easier.
Okay, cool. That actually makes sense because, with the salad stuff, that's what I'm finding, that's not processing a lot, and probably cutting back on some of the probably not boiling it, but like having it a bit softer.
Yeah, just like steaming it. Yeah, to it's that, so it's just like soft enough to squash down. I think that would make a big difference. And then, then you can maybe slowly start to add in maybe a few salad leaves. Just go slowly, because I think I don't want you to be put off from making these changes, because you're making amazing changes, but you just got to help your body kind of get used to your new way of eating.
Thank you.
Of course.
Great. There's another one. Thank you for the great tips there. That's good. And I'm just looking at the Facebook there. I think it looks good as well. Yeah, someone said that they try fasting, they try all of that. Is that one of them people saying multiple meal is better, not buying in temptation and things like that. So it's good.
Amazing. Thanks, ladies. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Some of them saying that, yeah, our gut is not used to certain type of food. That's true in there as well. So yeah, what a wonderful recording session. It was actually very informative. Everything was wonderful. I think we had a really good time today.
Oh, thank you so much.
So ladies, if you wanted to know more, feel free to contact Sherry here. We will put her contact into the chat there as well for you to actually follow up. And thank you again for a wonderful time today. And I thank you for all our live audience joining us today on today's webinar, Knowledge is Power. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks again.